You're listening to Tehachapi with Key Budge, Corey Costello, and Greg Garrett.
Here we are, another episode of Tehachapi. I'm Key Budge. Today with me, Greg Garrett, Corey Costello. Guys, how you doing today?
Good afternoon.
Good to see you, as always.
A little bit delayed in that response, Corey.
Well, Greg said afternoon.
I know. I said afternoon, and actually we're recording in the morning. So,
But he does this all the time. He'll say good morning. It's like 3 PM, and it's a good morning. And so
I do that, don't I?
Yeah, it happens a lot. So you just have to process it and then roll with your response.
I don't even know why I wear a watch. I really don't. We're always working.
You know, folks, if you're kind of curious, it's like, okay, this is a little bit different start. Well, we've had an interesting week this week. I mean, this has been high-speed rail week.
Yeah, and last week too, leading up to
last week, yeah.
And the week before that, you know, we've been in this high-speed purgatory for 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah.
Literally.
Very true.
Right? Are they going to build it? Not going to build it. What should we do?
Right.
Do you want to invest? What about the line? Where are they going to put it? They're going to put up a sound wall. Yeah. What's going on?
The governor cancels it, then he uncancels it.
Right. And then we're going to get more federal money, and the stimulus money. And some people hate it. Some people love it. Some people don't care. It's purgatory.
Right. And so here we are in 2021. And we're looking back to something that we at the city of Tehachapi and our Jay Schlosser prepared a 8 to 10 page document that went to HSR dealing with the CEQA and the EIR.
That came out last year, the first version of this in Palmdale to Bakersfield segment.
In April of 2020.
Right.
And then all of a sudden we have a conference call, a Zoom call with them. And let's tell everyone what happened in that call. We're in response to this letter and in the process that we're in with HSR.
Well, it was the most ridiculous Zoom call I've been on in a long time, and that's a bold statement, right? But for years, we've been working with the high-speed rail, creating mitigation efforts, right? All along, they have been, high-speed rail, HSR, have been working with us, and I guess just, kind of playing along, kind of nodding their heads, but in the back of their mind, I think they knew that they were never going to mitigate this area. And last week, they said, sorry, we're not going to do it. And so then we went back on our heels. You guys are not being honest with us. How's that, right? We're honest with our citizens. They're not honest with their constituents all up and down the state, I guess. And so we had to put in motion, we needed the people of Tehachapi and beyond to recognize and to hear that and to know that they're not willing to step up to the plate and do exactly what they said they were going to do.
And the environmental impact report was reopened based on some biology things, so it allowed an opportunity for the public to comment again. And that's really why we wanted to bring it to everybody's attention that, look, this is not about stopping high-speed rail. There's some folks out there that think, we don't want it. Well, the state made that decision for you a long time ago. There is no, I don't want it. That is not an option. But what is the option in our side of the table is, okay, it's going to come here, in theory. So we need to make sure that it's done appropriately so it doesn't destroy the valley and the impact, because we don't have a stop. So the impact's not overwhelming. So, they put together their document, and their own document admits there's about 47 homes in Arabian Estates, and there's also several more, about 80 or so, in the Ash Village. And the line is going to sort of bisect those a little closer to Arabian Estates than Ash Village. And the big thing there was the sound. Well, in their own document, it says there's going to be 40 some odd properties in Arabian States with severe impacts that will go unmitigated.
And that's their word.
That's severe. Their word. Severe impact. On their chart, they have a chart and they have a formula and the calculations they do. But also in that chart, it says that is mitigation reasonable based on this chart, where they kind of put the cost, and it's basically a cost-benefit analysis. And they say, no, it's not reasonable. So the problem is those documents they kind of become law. They become your playbook once it's approved. So with putting that in the document, that these issues will go unmitigated, and there's a bunch of other issues too. That's just one of the ones.
You're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, that's just an easy one to point to. I mean, there's issues with noise by the hospital as it exits a tunnel that was they didn't even put a noise receptor near the hospital to gauge noise there. But anyway, the issue is they want to put these things in this document unmitigated. And even now they're coming back and saying, well, we'll work with you. Well, the problem is if you put it on paper as unmitigated, then there's no guarantee we're ever going to get anything that we need in the future to make this rail, not so imposing on Tehachapi.
And I think what we've heard, some of the feedback that we've gotten from other communities that HSR has gone through in the Central Valley, HSR says one thing and then ends up doing another when it comes time to actually doing the construction.
And so that's a good point, Key. So our friends down in Wasco spoke up and alerted us here in Tehachapi. Hey, they're decimating our town. They're decimating the going through town. They're demolishing the Amtrak station. There's a 250 unit apartment complex that's left, not demoed but abandoned. All kinds of things, and so they're having big problems.
Yeah, we went down and actually saw Wasco. So Wasco had a housing authority, the city housing authority for farm labor, years ago, built back in the 60s and 70s, if I'm not mistaken. Well, the way the rail line was running initially was supposed to be elevated. This is another one of those examples, right? And like it was through Tehachapi initially, this is going to be elevated. And then they went, oh, that's really expensive. And when they started doing those analysis, we're going to do a lot of this at ground level. Well, by putting it in ground level in Wasco, that basically bisected a portion of their city, and it would basically have cut off this housing tract, this housing development, a kind of apartment complex, away from the rest of the city without a safe way to really get across the tracks. So the city was able to agree with them to build a new one, and High Speed Rail did and relocated those residents. The problem is there's finger pointing as to who's responsible for demolishing the old one. Wasco was under the impression that HSR was going to do it. HSR said, not our problem. They've just left this thing to rot, and we all went down and saw it, and it has literally rotted away. It looks like, the Walking Dead scene going on right there. It's just crime and graffiti and more crime, and it's an awful place.
And that was backed up by some of the business owners in that Wasco corridor that said everything that gets, now we're getting hit every night by theft, and things are being recovered at this site.
Yeah.
So it's being used as kind of a hub for criminal activity to, just wreak havoc across the city of Wasco. And that's their camp, if you will.
Right. Kern County Sheriff was there. Their gang unit was there at this event, and they all backed it up, saying crime is just running rampant.
Arresting 3 people just before we arrived.
Clearing the scene, right? Yeah. So it's safe for us to traverse through the area. One of the things, high-speed rail, the devil's in the details, right? High-speed rail was originally going to be elevated through Wasco. They made the decision to put it at ground level. Mm-hmm. And then all of these issues have been created, right? And so now in Tehachapi, what are they really going to do? Where are they really going to build it? How is it going to be high? Is it going to be low? Is it going to be elevated? Sound walls, all those things, they must be in the document, and they're not willing to put it in the document.
Yeah, and a concern for us, too, came up in that last meeting where, this was one of the things that was pointed out by Jay, our engineer, was, none of the noise by the hospital was actually studied in the noise impact, which is crazy considering it's going to be just outside 1,000 feet from the hospital. But they pointed out to us, well, it's outside of 1,000 feet, so technically we don't have to study the impact of the hospital. And on top of that, they actually went out of their way to point out, I want to make sure you guys haven't gone to YouTube and found this video of a German high-speed rail train creating a sonic boom as it enters a tunnel. Because don't worry, we're not going to let that happen. Well, unfortunately, we're not going to let that happen. It doesn't carry a ton of weight. So what do we do? Well, we go to YouTube to find out exactly what they're referring to. And they're referring to, yes, there's a train, a high-speed train that basically, as it enters a tunnel, creates a sonic boom at the other end. So we're going to have 20 sonic booms a day and that kind of stuff. So those were the things that started to concern us, thinking, wow, there's these other issues out here that they realize are there, that they haven't even studied, but they're just kind of giving us a wink and a handshake saying, don't worry.
And then verbally they say, oh, don't worry, we're going to pressurize the tunnel. Are you kidding me? It's not in the report.
Yeah.
They're going to tell us verbally, oh, don't worry, we're going to have to pressurize the tunnel so you don't hear this F-16 afterburner situation, right? The generator to do that would have to be enormous, and we don't even have enough electricity in our system to keep the lights on, for goodness sakes.
Yeah. And then coming up from Edison to Tehachapi, if I look at the map, there's 4 tunnels. Yeah. They're going to have 4 tunneling sections. But those are going to have impact on East Golden Hills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there'll be some noise impact. And we've brought that noise impact up. We've asked them, we've let them know, look, Tehachapi is unique. It's a bowl, right? We sit in the valley. We're surrounded by mountains. And depending on certain days where I live, I can hear the train at my house like I'm living on F Street downtown. But I'm not. It's just the way the wind's traveling that day, and the sound goes up the canyon where the railroads are located. And this track's going to be right by that. So you're going to, on certain days, I'm the East Golden Hills residents, West Golden Hills residents, whatever. It's going to travel. And so, but we've brought that up about the noise, and they just say, well, that's outside of our study area, so it really doesn't matter. It's outside this little zone
Flat,
we need.
Right? In Hart Flat, they're going to hear this train.
Yeah.
We're going to hear it all over. We're going to hear it all over.
Well, I know. So I saw someone made a comment on our social media about, oh, well, hey, you live close to Edwards Air Force Base. There's sonic booms all day long. At what, 10, 20,000 feet?
And once a year at best?
But I mean, we're talking elevation versus at ground level. When we had the military, when Edwards Air Force Base did its October, the flyover, the air show, and we got some of the F-18s down low. But what were they at? What was the elevation?
Oh, well, here probably
6, 7.
Yeah, probably at least 10.
Yeah.
So at 10,000 feet, you could hear that roar and feel, and you could feel that the energy that it created in one flyover. Now,
but Key, that sound is the sound of freedom. A train is not a sound of freedom.
Right. But the thing is, it's not going to be at 10,000 feet.
We don't have sonic booms in Tehachapi. It's very, very rare.
And we're talking 20 times a day when this train comes through.
Right.
Then it's going to come roaring, rumbling, this constant. It would be like having Edwards fly over all day long at 5,000 feet.
Yeah.
Just them constantly boom, right through us.
Right.
And that's what's going to happen with this train. And they don't care about what happens to small towns.
Yeah, we're not a stop town. And high-speed rails assured us, we'll take care of you just like anybody else. No, the special attention goes to the stop towns. That's why the Wascos of the world are just kind of getting blazed through and that kind of stuff. But the attention is being paid to places like Bakersfield and Palmdale, who are getting a benefit revitalizing their downtowns because of these stops. And I'm not saying that we should have a stop, because that comes with a whole bunch of other issues as well. But it's just, not getting the same treatment that some of the stop towns are getting. Meanwhile, they are really going to be pouring through this valley on a regular basis.
Now, Greg, you had a chance to talk with John and Ken from KFI, two huge talk show hosts, that are on a national market, global market in syndication. Yeah. And you got the opportunity to spend some time. What was that experience, getting a chance to chat with them? Because I know they're not fans of the high-speed rail.
Yeah, they're not fans of high-speed rail. Make no mistake, though. Tehachapi is, again, as Corey said, we're not sitting here trying to stop the high-speed rail. We are in support of infrastructure. But great care needs to be taken when you introduce new infrastructure in the current culture or social economic situations, right? We need to be aware of what's going on. But that was a very interesting conversation. They spent 10 or 12 minutes with me, I believe.
We're going to take a few of those highlights and let's play those for the community. But that's courtesy of our friends over at KFI AM 640 from iHeartMedia. And let's hear some of the highlights with you chatting with John and Ken.
Well, right now, they're working on the segment that runs from Bakersfield to Madera. But if you go south, eventually the train is supposed to go to Palmdale. And Tehachapi, it would be on that stretch between Bakersfield and Palmdale.
Right.
So, even though Newsom said...
Isn't this where we heard it was going to be impossible to get through these mountains? Isn't that...
yeah, that's been... nobody really knows how they're going to do that.
They had like a couple of ideas, and both of them were like, oh, my God, that'll take forever.
They do have a plan to really tear up Tehachapi on the way.
Well, that's what this is about, right?
Let's get Greg Garrett on, the city manager of Tehachapi, because he's dealing with...
They held a press conference today to tell everybody that would come and listen about their problems with high-speed rail.
Greg, welcome to the John and Ken Show.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you for having me.
What is high-speed rail doing right now that caused you to schedule this press conference? What is it you want to tell the public here?
They're not following through with their, let's say, promises or commitments. So we've been working with high-speed rail for 6 to 8 years, public meetings and meetings here at City Hall, talking about the impact that it'll have on our beautiful valley here as it comes up the hill, diving into the Antelope Valley. We talk about things like sound, mitigation, aesthetics, the look and feel. And we had a conference meeting with them 2 weeks ago, and they basically said, that all sounds great, you're right, but we don't have the money to do any of it, which I think is ironic.
What do you want done specifically? Is there an easy way to explain this?
So as the train comes up the mountain from the Bakersfield-San Joaquin area, it'll climb from an elevation of 500 feet up to 4,000. So they're going to be boring and they're going to be tunneling. They're only going to design the train a 10% design and then tell the contractor, basically, we're standing here in Bakersfield, we need to go to the top of that hill. So they've got to do that. And then once they get to Tehachapi, they're going to pop out of the hill just north of the city, actually in the city limits, but this is an undeveloped area at this moment, right behind a brand new $100 million publicly funded hospital just opened its doors a couple years ago. And then they'll be traversing from the west to the east or east to the west, and then flying over the freeway, which has 16 million vehicles a day, the railroad tracks, and the city, and then diving down into the Antelope Valley. But as they come through our valley, it's going to be very, very noisy, right? If you go to YouTube and you watch YouTube videos of high-speed rail coming in and going out of tunnels, it's a large pop. It sounds like a F-16 with its afterburner on. So we're looking for sound walls. We're looking for aesthetics, the look and feel, right? Because, 150 years ago when the railroad came through town, there wasn't much here, right? But now there's 40,000 people, and great care needs to be taken into how the look and feel. And so they're basically refusing to put up certain sound walls and make any mitigation efforts towards the look and feel. If you're in Bakersfield or Palmdale with the station, you're going to have probably a very positive economic impact. We're not. We're just going to have 20 trains go through town every day at 200 miles an hour, very noisy.
And it's coming out of an underground tunnel near your hospital.
Right behind the hospital. This valley that it's going to cut through and right between two neighborhoods that are long established, if they don't do something that they promised, then the blight will start to occur, right? And so things will deteriorate quickly, I'm sure of it.
What is it like dealing with the high-speed rail officials? I've always tried to wonder how they operate, because this job is actually, this whole project has been in a shambles now for 13 years. And I wonder, what do they do all day? How do they communicate? What is their demeanor? What can you tell us?
You said you've been working with them for years on this.
Well, yeah, we have. And when they come to town, they'll bring an entourage. It's almost like when the Rolling Stones come to town. There's so many people, you don't know who's in charge, what's going on. Consultants on the payroll. Some of them just come to set up internet connections and make sure the PowerPoint works, and then they sit there for 3 hours. And so the waste is pretty incredible. However, having said all of that, these are incredibly smart people. They know what's going on, except the bureaucracy that has been created in our state, in our country, is mind-boggling. And so a lot of times their hands are tied because we as citizens have created this bureaucratic effect, quite frankly. But it's tough.
Let me ask you this. We did this story a few years ago. The idea of tunneling through the Tehachapi Mountains, they haven't even figured that out yet. Don't you think this, if they ever do, this is probably decades away?
Well, that was our thought also. If you're train buff, you know that the world-famous Tehachapi Loop was built 150 years ago because the grade was too steep, right? And so we have freight trains coming through town every day. We're train experts, if you will, but you cannot climb that grade. So they haven't figured that out yet. But Tehachapi was originally the last link. We were the hardest link to put together. But because a private company has initiated a train from Victorville, California, to Las Vegas, the high-speed rail has said, we need to get our riders to Victorville. Well, I'm not sure how you're going to, if you live in the Bay Area or Sacramento area, you're going to maybe take a car or a bus or a train, something, I don't know, from the Bay Area to Madera, and then from Madera, take the high-speed rail to Palmdale, and from Palmdale, get on another bus and go to Victorville and get on a train to go to Vegas. Just this morning, I Googled Southwest Airlines, and for $67, you can fly Southwest Airlines from San Francisco to Las Vegas round trip.
There you go. What's the point, right?
And that probably wouldn't even take an hour.
37 minutes? I don't know. At the end of the day, they're just bullying small towns is what they're doing. We have in Kern County, we have a coalition of city managers that meet twice a week, and I've been comparing notes with a Wasco city manager. It's a small town in the Central Valley, and high-speed rail has decimated their town. As a matter of fact, they are demolishing the Amtrak station. How ironic is that? So they'll no longer have Amtrak in Wasco.
Well, Greg, we enjoyed talking with you, and keep us posted. I know you tried to get a lot of attention today to what's going on there in Tehachapi with high-speed rail. We thank you for coming on.
We appreciate it. If you have any comments, high-speed rail, 866-300-3044, and the comment period ends a week from today. We appreciate it.
Give that number again, because there'll be comments from our audience.
866-300-3044. 3044, or you can go to their website, and that's Bakersfield_Palmdale at hsr.ca.gov, and that's the comment period for the Bakersfield to Palmdale environmental section.
All right, that's the City Tehachapi City Manager Greg Garrett. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks.
John and Ken at KFI, that's a big platform for us to have our voice heard. Here they're talking about Little Tehachapi in a major radio market, and then expanding that conversation. So I'm so happy you got a chance to talk to them.
Well, it's not how we want to put Tehachapi on the map, that's for sure.
Right.
In a negative context as that is, but still, people understand the impact. We want them to understand the impact.
One of the things that you brought up was the Tehachapi Loop. And here we have this engineering marvel, that had to take place for the railroad to come through over 100 years ago. And what are they going to be doing? I mean, it'll be another engineering marvel that they still haven't conceptually, other than we're going to drill a hole in the ground.
They don't know yet. It's a 10% design. They're going to stand at the bottom of the hill, look up at the top of the hill, so 5,000 feet elevation in the San Joaquin Valley to the 4,000 foot elevation Tehachapi is, in a short amount of distance, right? That's why the loop was designed and built back in the day, right? Short amount of distance. It's not a lot of elevation, but it is in that short amount of distance. What are they going to do? They don't know yet. And they admit it.
Yeah, they have no plan, and they're going to just sort of push. They have their line on a map, and they're going to basically figure out how to get through these granite hills that sit over an earthquake fault. So that should be a great project.
One of my biggest fears is they'll build infrastructure and then abandon the project, right? When you drive 99, you look at those giant monolith concrete structures, and I think to myself, I hope they build it and they run trains, because if they don't, how's that going to work? Who's going to demolish that? And it's been decimated already. All the businesses, the residents, everything is already been.
And they don't
moved
go
out.
from A to B.
Oh my goodness.
They that would make sense, right? You build the transcontinental railroad. What they do? They start at one spot, start at the other end, and they tried to meet in the middle. That's how they built the first railroad. Now the thought is, well, we're just going to build what we can instead of starting at A and going to B and then going from B to C. We're going to start in the middle of A to B because it's flat here, and then we'll work on acquiring those properties. And so what happens is you have this sort of hodgepodge that's not connected yet. And so, the worry would be there's some flat and some at-grade stuff in Tehachapi. They could probably start drilling and digging as soon as they want.
It's kind of like when you are doing a puzzle on a rainy day, and you've got that 1,000-piece puzzle, and you try to find the corner pieces.
Yeah.
And you just start, I've got one corner piece here, and that'll fit somewhere in this section.
Yeah.
And then you try and put it together, but it doesn't make sense. Then you got to move it.
Right.
So this doesn't really make sense.
It's a good analogy. It's like trying to build a puzzle from the middle out.
It's
How
a
do we
great
build a puzzle?
analogy, but you're doing that on your own time. We're talking about taxpayer dollars. And it's really sad because we have local agencies spending taxpayer dollars fighting the high-speed rail to make them do the right thing. And high-speed rail, of course, is using taxpayer dollars too. It's a waste of money. Why can't they project manage this? And I don't want to belittle, this is an enormous project, right? It's way beyond my scope of project management. But certainly, there has to be somebody out there that could figure this out.
Well, and let's not also forget the important fact that not only the tax dollars on both sides from our two entities, in conversation and entangled.
Times hundreds, because all up and down the state. Yeah.
Let's look at the hospital. That's tax money. $100 million brand new hospital out there that's going to be impacted by the sound, whether or not they mitigate.
Sound, vibration, who knows?
Yeah. I mean, and David Butler, our president of Adventist Health Tehachapi Valley Hospital, he's new to our area, and he was very concerned because he has experience living in an area, that's impacted by trains where he came from.
Right.
So to think of, we've got $100 million taxpayer investment sitting out there, and now we've got this unknown, train that's supposed to pop up.
How many dollars have been spent on high-speed rail so far? What is their budget? Do you know?
It's in the billions.
It's in the billions for sure.
It's an open checkbook.
And we can't even get the state of California to acknowledge we need climbing lanes on Highway 58 coming up from Bakersfield to Tehachapi. A couple, I don't know, 150 million in total, and that area is gridlock. So we can't even maintain what we have, much less build a train.
And Highway 58 is the east-west corridor coming out of the Bay Area for commerce.
There's 16 million vehicles every year that travel that freeway.
That would have a positive impact, not only on the national economy, where you're able to move freight and commerce more freely, it would, on a local basis and on a national basis, that makes sense.
That's one of the greatest arguments I heard from former Congressman Bill Thomas, who really advocated for, what we know as TRIP money, Thomas Roads Improvement Project. It's happening a lot in Bakersfield, but the ultimate goal is to connect 99 to 58. 99 to 5. And or 58 to 5. There we go. And so he said, look, I didn't spend my life advocating for Highway 58, because he even got 58 to connect from Union to Real Road eventually, way back in the late 70s. He said, I didn't spend my life connecting Highway 58 to I-5 just to have commerce stop outside of Tehachapi because of truck climbing. So that's on the radar, but it goes to your point about commerce, and it's being noticed that, we're spending a lot of money to connect Highway 58 to I-5, but then what's going to happen? This commerce is going to grind to a halt outside of Tehachapi because there's 2 lanes and the trucks are going 36 and 37 miles an hour.
With the conversation, you got Bill Thomas that's talking about that aspect. Well, you've got Congressman McCarthy, based on our news conference. The news media asked Congressman McCarthy about his feelings about high-speed rail, very strong feelings, and he shared about, it being 3 times over budget already and where's it going to go. Well, we've also got our representative, State Senator Shannon Grove, with her thoughts, and she shared those specifically for us.
Hi, I'm Senator Shannon Grove, here representing California's 16th Senate District. I want to talk to you today about the High-Speed Rail Authority and what they're doing to push aside the serious concerns of our community as they move forward with their disastrous project. Many cities across the state, such as Tehachapi, have brought their concerns to the High-Speed Rail Authority. These concerns are serious and have major impacts on our community and should not be overlooked. However, the High-Speed Rail Authority has indicated these concerns are too costly to address, and the project will move forward regardless of the impact on our residents. Once again, the big rail fail has proven that it's a destructive project that's over budget, over deadline, and a complete waste of taxpayer dollars. I continue to urge the governor to put a stop to his failed pet project and to protect Californians and our communities against this disastrous project moving forward.
Senator Shannon Grove, she's not afraid to say what's on her mind.
She never has been.
Every time she's on the show, she is not afraid to share what's on her mind, that's for sure. We know where she sits on the train side of things.
As we were out there at our press conference site out near the hospital at the end of Capitol Hills Parkway, we invited the public to attend to, and we had a very nice turnout from our community that were concerned. And they live in Ash Village. They live in Arabian Estates, and they came out because they wanted to hear what was going on, what was going to happen to them potentially here down the road. And there was I really appreciated the fact they came out and they wanted to listen. They wanted to hear what was being done. And so that way they could, hopefully they're going to voice their opinion as we encourage them to do right now. But it was nice to see the community come out as well.
Well, we even stuck around and answered questions. I mean, if there was a question in the audience or something that was slightly answered, afterwards I went over to talk to that person. Greg went to talk to that person. Key, Jay, Mayor Smith, council members were kind of holding audiences to kind of answer questions from the residents who had concerns about their property specifically. So I think that was a good kind of public touch moment for sure.
Well, we achieved our goal, and that was to make everyone aware of where we stand at this point in time. High-speed rail is trying to back out of their commitments.
Well, not only did we get a chance to talk to LA Radio with John and Ken, we had every news outlet from Bakersfield in attendance. We had our community in attendance. But Corey, you got a chance to talk to the top talk show out of Fresno because the high-speed rail is impacting their area as well.
They're all too familiar with it. They're familiar with what's impacting, obviously, the large metropolis of Fresno, but also the small communities around Fresno, the Selmas of the world, and those kind of folks. They're being impacted by high-speed rail. And so, I had a chance. KMJ 580 and 105.9 FM is the top radio station in Fresno, and it does bleed into the Central Valley, has a huge reach. And they reached out and wanted to talk about this after seeing some of the coverage that happened in the Bakersfield, California over the weekend. We announced our press conference.
KMJNow.com. A guest joining us for just a couple of minutes. We're going to talk with the Tehachapi Economic Development Coordinator. Corey Costello's his name. And the high-speed rail continues its slog through this part of California. Bill Maher, I think, hitting the nail on the head, describing a high-speed rail from Bakersfield to Merced as one giant leap if you're a raisin. And now we find out that with billions of dollars in, billions and billions more to spend, a timeline that seems to reach to the edge of infinity like a phosphorus dot on an old television, they're not even honoring the quality of life tchotchkes, I guess, that they offered to some of our communities. And so we welcome Mr. Costello joining us now on KMJ. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate you making time for us. Tell us about what is happening today in Tehachapi, in Wasco.
Yeah, so the city of Tehachapi, we're part of the Bakersfield to Palmdale line, which, initially of the 8 sections of high-speed rail, when this thing was supposed to connect San Francisco to Anaheim, we were going to be the last leg. We were going to be the golden spike, if you will, because they would build from the south and build from the north, and they'd connect in the middle. But that obviously changed when the priorities of high-speed rail changed, and they decided just to build Merced to Bakersfield initially. But then the Bright Line Express, if you're familiar with that, that is Victorville to Las Vegas, a privately funded high-speed train, came out, and they said, we're going to build this thing, and they're working on some approvals for that. Well, that got the high-speed rail folks excited that somebody actually might want to ride their train to Las Vegas. And so they let us know, look, Bakersfield to Palmdale is jumping up on the section as far as priority-wise, and we really want to get going on our environmental documents. And so we've been working with them for a long time, and we've had some understandings of obviously routes and lines and what they would do to mitigate the impact to our community. And then when the environmental impact report came out last year, we sent a long letter of all the things we thought need to be mitigated, and they basically said every one of those is quote-unquote unreasonable based on their metrics. And so here we are today with really a bunch of unmitigated noise and aesthetics concerns for this line that's going to go through Tehachapi and not stop.
One of the things that you point out in your response letter from really a year ago now is that they gave you such a massive amount of documentation to sort through, to analyze and respond to, that it was not reasonable for any municipality, for any county entity to read and react to this intelligently in the time that they had allotted. That was a year ago. Has that changed? Have they become more responsive to your concerns on behalf of Tehachapi about lifestyle and noise abatement?
They'll tell us that on the phone and in a Teams meeting, which we had a couple weeks ago, where we finally said, okay, enough, because they had basically said, yeah, all your concerns, we get it. This is a lot of information, but this is the time we're supposed to give, and so that's all we're required to do, and that's what we're going to do. And that basically was the trend that continued through. And look, our engineers read all that stuff. To his credit, that's his job. He's done it, but he knows that Joe Public doesn't have the time to read that stuff. And so they kind of kept that trend going through all of our concerns, especially when it came to the noise. They said, yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, that makes sense, but next item, we'll move on now. And so that's where we finally said enough. After seeing what's happened in Wasco, we work very close with the city of Wasco. COVID has brought us together as communities in Kern County. All the city leaders meet on it twice a week and compare notes on a variety of things, and high-speed rail was one of those deals. So we've gotten to witness firsthand what happens when high-speed rail gives you a wink and a handshake in Wasco, and we're trying to make sure that doesn't happen in our community.
Mr. Costello, you point to that $4 million sound barrier that was supposed to be put in place as being kind of this straw or tipping point, rather. Do you think that part of this is that high-speed rail believes they can, pardon the phrase, railroad small communities like Tehachapi in the hopes of laying enough rail and then getting up to bigger cities like Fresno or in the Valley and then being able to push forward there? Are you guys being targeted because of lack of representation?
I think they're learning really quickly that the city of Tehachapi is not an easy mark. We're not a bunch of hillbillies located above Bakersfield. That we have some pretty smart, educated people. And matter of fact, some of the brightest minds in the nation live here because they're putting things into space out in the Mojave Desert. So we're obviously a community they probably underestimate a little bit in terms of what we have and our reach. Our media reach, are able to get on radio stations like KMJ and talk about what we have and the concerns and really to send our message out. And so they're learning, I think, that we're probably, they underestimate us a little bit, but I think there is something to your philosophy of maybe going after the little communities and then kind of pushing from there. And we saw that in Wasco. I mean, Wasco received money to basically relocate a housing authority camp for farm workers. It was relocated. The problem is the old one wasn't knocked down. And High-Speed Rail says that's not our responsibility. Meanwhile, we went and toured it, and it looks like a scene from The Walking Dead. It is a crime-infested drug. I mean, they arrested 3 people there just before we got on our tour 2 weeks ago, and that's where all the activity for the sheriff's department's at, and it's a problem. And so we look at that and think about the neighborhoods we have adjacent to this rail line. And they're basically admitting that, yes, we're going to have severe impact, but we don't believe that a sound wall at $4 million is reasonable, which is crazy given the billions of dollars this project is over budget.
Well, and that's right now the estimated cost for getting the high-speed rail to function from Palmdale to Merced is $100 billion. That would be like me scoffing at spending 40 cents as a component of a $10,000 purchase.
And we think that's what the cost is going to be, because they've actually told us they do not have a plan to get through the mountains from Bakersfield to Tehachapi, which I've pointed out to them in our meetings. That look, the last time a rail line came up that grade, it took an engineering marvel, the Tehachapi Loop, to make that possible, where the train loops around itself, only place in America that happens. And so they're not sure how to get through the hills yet, and they're just going to, quote, 10% design build. So that's a number today. Obviously, once they start design building and realizes that these are granite hills sitting above an earthquake fault, that it might get a little more spendy. So, yeah, and that's kind of the frustrating part, is for them just to dismiss those mitigation measures as not being reasonable because it doesn't meet this formula they put together, when, $4 million is lunch money considering the impact of this project and the giant budget that it has and continues to increase.
I'm sorry, I just want to revisit the fact that we haven't figured out how to get through the mountains yet, because that seems like a really important piece of this puzzle.
That's the crazy part. And literally, I mean, you watch shows on how the Transcontinental Railroad was built, right? They basically, the feds would say, okay, go through there. I want you to go there, and I don't care what land you have to go through and take. Just get it done, and then we'll connect at the end. And they just built and did what they needed to do. And that was in the 1800s, and here we are in 2021, really essentially kind of doing the same thing, which is the concern, not knowing and not having a real plan to get through the hills on either side. We're surrounded by mountains on both sides in the valley, so they've got 2 tunneling issues that they haven't quite addressed yet.
One of their analogies prior to you coming on, as they teased the conversation that was going to take place, was they were able to analyze, I've seen this before, the high-speed rail and Game of Thrones, where we gobble up small villages along the way before we go on to the big battle.
Right.
And they're looking at the small little villages that they gobble up, like Wasco. We don't want Tehachapi to be that small village. We're putting up a fight.
Yeah.
We're going to make sure we hold them accountable and make sure they do the right thing, is what our goal is. But they're gobbling up, chewing up these small communities along the path of the HSR. Folks, we really want you to have your voice. We're going to give you a couple of contact points for the high-speed rail so you can voice your opinion. First is a phone number at 866-300-3044. That's 866-300-3044. Or you can send an email to bakersfield_palmdale@hsr.ca.gov, because this Tehachapi is right in the middle of the Bakersfield to Palmdale leg, with beautiful multi-million-dollar stations that are going to be in Palmdale and in Bakersfield, but we get the blight here in Tehachapi.
And it should be mentioned, the reason why the Tehachapi section for years was always considered to be last. They'd start south and build north. They'd start north and build south, and they'd connect in the middle. And then when it kind of got limited, when the governor initially said he's going to cancel the project, then he said, okay, Merced to Bakersfield. And then this Brightline train Las Vegas to Victorville or Victorville to Las Vegas was announced, privately funded, and it got the high-speed rail folks thinking that if they could get to Palmdale, they could increase ridership because there'd be a connector to Las Vegas. And so that's why the Tehachapi segment all of a sudden sort of bumped up in the priority when it came to environmental documents and that kind of stuff.
Key, it should be noted that those phone number and email address, the comments need to be received by Monday, April 12th, right? So you have a limited amount of time. If you wish to comment on the CEQA document or the EIR, you have until April 12th to do so.
And it says it ends April 12th, so I don't know if that's going to. So I would get it in by Sunday the 11th.
Yeah, for sure.
And not wait till the 12th, because maybe they'll say, oh, well, you had to get it in by the 12th and not on the 12th. Yeah. So I know we've been using the 12th as a reference, but I started looking at the language, the way they wrote it. I go, there could be something a little bit sticky about that.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
What else can we do as residents of Tehachapi? I mean, we want to voice our opinion. We want to let our elected representatives know and be engaged in the conversation of what's going on. What's left for our community to do? What can we encourage them to reach out?
Biggest thing is to pay attention. I think a lot of folks were maybe they felt like they were caught off guard. And then, wait a minute, this is coming here? Well, this is not news. This has been in the works for several years now. So maybe that was the biggest thing. It's just, and hopefully we help raise attention. So keep paying attention.
Knowledge is power. Education is power. You need to understand what's going on around you, and don't be complacent, right? What's happening in our country, in our world right now, in the high-speed rail, people have been sitting, lazy, let's say, but working, kids are not in school, they're trying to educate their kids, this and that, and things are happening around them still as we speak.
And with HSR, I know all of the documentation that has been in place, they take it to the library, and that's your public place to go view. And I know with our library, it's only open a couple days a week, and they've had curbside service. So it's a little challenge. You're going to have to learn to navigate the website at hsr.ca.gov, because that's where all of the information is.
All of the information, 2,500 pages.
Right.
Let's be honest. Do you think somebody in the public, we're paid to read it, to understand it? That's what Jay did for the city of Tehachapi, right? But an average guy is not going to do that. So I have to believe on purpose, by design, it was created 2,500 pages.
And that comment was in our letter, actually. It said, this is 2,500 pages. You expect the public to be able to digest this? And that was actually a concern. And this is not enough time to review. It's too big of a document. And they literally went, well, the rules are we only have to allow this much time. And so, yet another problem with CEQA, right? Yeah.
CEQA law is so broken. It was originally designed to help the public understand the project, whatever it happens to be, right? So you can clearly understand. And it's created a monster. Yeah. It's out of control.
Well, folks, we really want you to, make sure your voice is heard. Send your concerns. We would love to encourage you to share those thoughts with the high-speed rail. Again, the phone number is 866-300-3044, and that has to be done before April 12th.
And focus and make sure those comments are focused to noise and aesthetics. If your comment is simply, I don't want this, they're just going to throw it out. It doesn't matter because, again, that's not really an option on the table. But if you can focus it on the sound, we should build a sound wall by Arabian Estates to make sure those properties are impacted. You should properly study sound exiting the tunnel by the hospital and put that in your document. That is the kind of comments that we're looking for, not just, I hate this project and don't spend any more money. That's not going to be addressed in the environmental report.
They'll be allowed to just blow past anything that's
They will just say received.
On topic.
Right.
Yes, they will just mark it as received, and that will be it.
Again, we're not here to stop high-speed rail. We're not naive. As a matter of fact, we support infrastructure, right? Highways, byways, aqueducts, on and on, airports, on and on. But this needs to be done right.
Mm-hmm. Folks, we appreciate your time here at Tehachapi. We encourage you to reach out to us, not only to HSR, but send us your comments and thoughts, because we would love to hear from you. Send us an email at media@tehachapicityhall.com, and we'll catch you on a future episode of Tehachapi.
Tehachapi is a conversation about Tehachapi designed for the people who live here or who would like to know more about this mountaintop community. If you have a question you would like answered, email media@tehachapicityhall.com. We will try to answer it on a future episode of Tehachapi.